So I'd like to welcome everybody. My name is David Greenwald. I am the founder and executive director of the Davis Vanguard. And we have a very special evening in store for you over the next hour and now 40 minutes. We will be having a town hall meeting where we are discussing the issue of student housing. So first of all, I want to recognize a few folks in the audience that are very important at this time, because in 2 months, some of you will be voting for some of these folks. So let's see if I can pull them all out. So we got Dan Carson. Hello. And Gloria Partida. And Linda Diaz, and Mark West, and Larry Gunther, and hopefully I am Eric. How can I forget Eric? Sorry. Very good. All right, so we got 6 of the 9. Linda.
Remember that?
I got Linda.
Oh, you did. All right. Sorry.
She's right in front of my nose. I can't miss her. All right, so these are 6 of the 9 candidates for City Council. And you get to vote for 2 of them, plus there are 3 others that are on the ballot that are not able to attend this evening. All right, so in a minute I'm going to introduce our panel, but I wanted to kind of set the stage by answering the question that I've been asked for the last month or 2. Why are we focused on student housing? And for me, it's been an interesting journey. I came to Davis as a graduate student now almost 22 years ago, and got married and am raising a family here in town, some of whom are sitting in the back. I've always been a person that has favored slower growth in this town, because I came to this community, and one of the reasons I stayed here is I like smaller towns. I lived previously in Washington, D.C., in Sacramento, and I much enjoy the college town, 60 to 70,000 person town atmosphere. However, what's happened in this community is that we're a town of 65,000 people, and we have a university that within 10 years is going to be pushing 40,000 people. And that's creating an interesting conflict between the community and the town. And the people that end up getting hurt in this conflict, unfortunately, are students. Students are one of the more vulnerable populations because they don't have a lot of resources. They're only here individually, at least for a few years, and they don't vote very often, although that may change this year. So the real eye-opener, I think, for me was 2 years ago. We have a court watch program where we send somewhere between 8 and 12 interns up to the courthouse, and I have a few of my interns here this evening as well, including one on the panel. I had an intern a couple of years ago, very bright young student, and she lived in what we might call a mini dorm, where there were 6 or 7 people living in a home probably designed to hold 4 or 5 people, and they had a problem with 1 or 2 of their roommates. And so the landlord, who was living overseas, ends up getting fed up trying to deal with this problem, and instead of kicking out just the individual or individuals that were causing the problem, she kicked them all out. And she kicked them out in the beginning of December, which, as anyone who has tried to rent housing knows, is not a good time to not have a place to live in Davis. To make matters worse, this particular intern didn't have a lot in the way of resources. Didn't have, her father was out of the picture, her mother didn't have money, she was basically making it on her own. After attempting to find housing in Sacramento where she thought it might be cheaper and realized that she couldn't even pass the credit check over there, she ended up taking time off of school and moved up to Washington to try to earn enough money to come back and finish her degree. And I think she was only maybe a year or maybe even less than a year from graduating. She ends up trying to come back, didn't have the resources to do that, ended up going in and out of mental institutions and dropping out of school. Now, this was an entirely avoidable situation, and for those who are opposed to some of these new housing situations, which are rent by bed, a rent by bed situation, the landlord would not have had to kick everybody out who was on the lease because they're individual leases. And so this was an eye-opening experience because it was a situation where the student could have completely avoided the problem and should have been able to graduate and ends up not being able to do so. So the other reason why student housing is a numbers issue. So by our calculations, and I don't have an exact figure, students represent somewhere between 65 and 85% of renters in town. And this is an issue that, unlike a lot of the other housing issues, which are really going to have regional approaches, it's an issue that can be solved locally. You build apartment housing for students in this town, and you supply that need. UC Davis builds housing on campus, and they can supply for that need. It's not like you're going to build a whole bunch of student housing in town and somebody from San Francisco moves into the student housing, which is a concern if you build a peripheral subdivision. So we actually have the ability to satiate existing demand for student housing, whereas housing for a lot of other demographics is much more difficult to address. And by providing student housing, we can pull students who are living in these single-family homes that we call mini dorms and get them into the apartments, and then hopefully free up the single-family homes for families again. So that's another big factor in why we should be addressing the issue of student housing. So there's a big issue, however, of affordability, and in a moment I'll be introducing Matt Dulcich from the university, who has just come out. The university has just come out with their draft EIR and their long-range development plan, which was very kind of you guys to do it right before the event. So I must thank you for the timing on that. Usually timing doesn't work out that neatly. But we've been looking into the issue of on-campus versus off-campus housing, and one of the big things that I think a lot of people don't realize is that as expensive as we think Davis is for renters, it's actually the second cheapest city to live off-campus in the UC system. So think about where the host cities are for UC. You have Berkeley, you have San Francisco, you have Santa Cruz, you have Isla Vista, you have La Jolla, you have Westwood, and it turns out even places like Irvine and Riverside are more expensive to rent off campus than Davis. So only Merced, as it turns out, is cheaper to rent off campus than Davis. And then the other factor is that for whatever reason, and maybe Matt can get into this, UC Davis on-campus housing is the second most expensive in the UC system. And I mean, it's not like you're talking about a huge difference, but you know, you are talking a couple $1,000s over the course of a year. Off-campus housing is roughly about 60% cheaper than on-campus housing. And so when you factor in the meal plan, students can spend for a single room on campus up to $1,800 a month. And even doubling and tripling up, I recently toured Tercero, and I got to see what a triple occupancy room look like. And it's a small room for one person, and then you got 3 beds in it. And that, I was told, was $950 a month. And that doesn't include the meal plan. And then you can look at the affordable housing at Solano Park, and maybe I should put affordable in quotes, where you're looking at about over $700 a month for a 450 square foot room, and then $900 for a 2-bedroom, which is about 550 square feet. So, you know, one of the big issues is going to be, can the campus provide housing that's more affordable than they have previously? And one of the things in one of the releases that they promised is that they're going to offer student housing that's well below market. I don't know what that looks like, but it says that. And then the other big issue, of course, is that the plan that's come out calls for the university to take on about 48% of all student enrollment with on-campus housing. Well, the university in the past has promised to increase their on-campus housing, and then the question is going to be now, are they going to deliver this time, whereas in the past they haven't? All right, so that, you know, not to heap everything onto Matt Dulcich, but you know, those are questions I think that are reasonable, and I hope he can address when I hand it over to him. I'm going to lay out the rest of the evening's plans, and then we'll start turning it over to the panel. So Matt Dulcich is actually going to go first and talk about the draft LRDP that was released. Then I'm going to introduce Mayor Rob Davis, who's on our panel, and ASUCD President Michael Goffman. And he's going to talk about some of the student housing issues. And then we have 2 additional people on the panel, Sean Raycraft, who could talk about issues of workforce housing, and Tony Sandoval, who can talk about how housing impacts some other groups. And then the big part of the town hall meeting, which is why I'm hoping some more of the students are going to show up here soon, is going to be the mic feature. It's going to be kind of like public comment. So on the left side of the room, we're going to open that mic for students to speak and tell their stories. And then on the right side of the room, any community members who wish to be heard can come up and speak. We are going to prioritize students, so we'll be taking 2 students for every community member that speaks. And then we've passed around these cards. On side 1, the line side of the paper, what I'd like you to do as it comes to you is write down in maybe just a few words what your biggest concern is about student housing, whatever it might be. And then on the back side, especially for students, you can talk about your own story, or whether you want to actually talk to us and have us interview you do a feature story on your experience with housing. I know there's some crazy stories out there, and I think the more that the community can become aware of the issues that students have to deal with, the better it's going to be. So now I'm going to turn the mic over, and we only have one mic up here, so I literally have to pass this along. So Matt Dulcich is going to go first here. Thank you and welcome.
Yeah, thank you, David. Thank you very much. That was a great introduction, and I will do my best to kind of coherently bring forward the current status of our campus planning effort. I did wake up this morning thinking, okay, I have this Davis Vanguard thing tonight, and people have been telling me, well, good luck, Matt, and you're so brave, and so I really thought this morning there would be pitchforks and angry people, so thank you all for being pleasant, and Larry's smile is helping me, thank you very much. But why don't I launch right into the LRDP? We call it the Long Range Development Plan, and it's the campus land use plan for forecasting potential growth that could be coming to the campus. And with the land uses that we would set out for that growth, we also forecast a population increase, and we start with enrollment. We say, well, what's our current population of students? About 34,000. What might we get to? And in this case, we've picked 39,000. And then we build up, well, how much employment would come with that? And we build up what academic facilities might be needed in terms of square feet for those facilities. And then the last component is housing. How much housing might we also need with that new LRDP? And that is kind of the foundation of the Long Range Development Plan. It's a long range land use plan for the campus. It forecasts potential growth. It doesn't really get into the effort of planning different sites and explaining exactly where buildings are. It is what we call a programmatic plan. It starts the planning process, and as we move forward each year in implementing projects, we refer back to that plan and we say, well, is this project, if it's being guided by the long range plan, what would be the right land use on this site, and what housing projects might we bring forward? So it's really the foundation, and in some ways it forecasts an ambition for the campus or a potential amount of growth. It does not guarantee that that growth would occur. It is really just a forecast of this could be the envelope for our future growth. We started that about 2.5 years ago, and we hosted numerous public workshops to get input on the plan. We took the old faculty club at UC Davis, which was for a while the Nelson Gallery, and we transformed that into an open house workshop area. And the public come in and give us comments on the plan. At that time, we really hadn't forecast a housing number. That public outreach process won an award from the American Planning Association for Best Community Outreach. We then rolled into different draft versions of the plan and offered those out to the internal UC Davis community and the larger external community. And that might resonate with some of you from about a year and a half ago as the controversies that were on Russell Field and Howard Field and Toomey Field, where we had said, well, maybe we could fit housing on those recreation areas. Maybe that would be a good use of that land. Maybe that would work out. Let's start testing that. Let's put that into the long range plan. The feedback we got was, well, please don't put housing on those areas. So we said, okay, let us think about it more. We pulled off the housing. We left the recreation areas intact, but we didn't want to decrease our housing number at that time. We left it the same and started to move forward with the next version of the plan. And the next version of the plan rolled out a number of, with the long range development plan, 6,200 beds of new housing for that enrollment growth of about 5,000 new students. We thought that would be ambitious. We thought it would be a good starting point, and we also said, okay, that's our base number, the 6,200. As we go forward implementing the plan, we would continue to test at each project site when we get to working on that project a higher number. We would look at, okay, could we on this project build taller? Could we put more buildings in and eventually over time implement a plan that was higher than the 6,200? And that was our base plan that we released in January of 2017. We then said, okay, housing is such a critical issue, let's accelerate 2 projects. Let's accelerate the West Village expansion project, and let's accelerate the Orchard Park project. And let's start with a request for developers to give us their proposals of how many students they could fit on those land use areas. So we asked for Orchard Park to target at least 900 beds for student housing, and we asked for West Village to target at least, I think the number was 1,875. The responses for West Village came back, well, some of the developers said, yeah, we can meet the target. One of the developers said we could be much more ambitious and get to the number that was about 3,600, 3,800. So where our target had been 1,875, the new number that we're working with is the 3,600, 3,800 number. For Orchard, it was pretty much the same, where we had set a target of 900. The responses came back that 1,400 was possible on those sites. So from that feedback that we were working on last year, we were able to reflect back into our draft plan of the 6,200 number and increase that number. So the current plan that's in our existing draft LRDP environmental impact report, instead of housing for 6,200, that new number is construction for 8,500, and that's the plan we are moving forward with. So I think I'm trying to catch up to where we are in the planning process, and that is with last Friday's release of our draft EIR. The EIR is the Environmental Impact Report. It's the report that analyzes, from implementing the long-range development plan over a 12-year period, what would be the environmental impacts. And we released that last Friday. It's open for public comment through May 29th. And a lot of the details about what would the impacts on traffic be, or noise, or construction impacts, or biological species impacts to ag land losses, those items are in the EIR, Environmental Impact Report. And there may be instances tonight where I'm not able to answer questions about the EIR. The public comment period is currently open, and the environmental review process really allows the public to be as critical as possible and identify for us what impacts we might have missed so that we can respond in writing. And rather than trying to respond tonight, if there are key issues about the EIR, I'll say, please send us a comment, but it's not really appropriate for me to try to respond verbally to those tonight. But that plan is open and available for comment, and I'd urge you to look at our website. It's Campus Tomorrow at UC Davis, where that plan and the EIR are available. So, and again, the date is May 29th that we'll be accepting comments. We're hoping to stay on schedule and get to the July meeting of the Board of Regents of the University of California, and hoping that that plan would be adopted. And into the EIR, we've included the project-specific analysis for the Orchard Park project and the West Village project. And in that way, we're able to accelerate the timeline of actually building those projects and bringing forward that total number of housing for those 2 projects, which is right now at 5,200 beds for students. So in that way, we've front-loaded from our expected growth of about 5,000 students. We're proposing right out the gate to build housing for 5,200 students. And then future projects would come along where we would build the remainder of the 8,500 number. Affordability, you mentioned affordability. These first projects have a couple of items where we are restricting the initial rents, and we're restricting the amount of escalation of those rents over time. We're also doing what's called affordability by design, and restricting the number of amenities that could be built into those projects, requiring those units to be built smaller, and in every way possible, trying to use levers that we can to make those units as affordable as possible. Those are things we are doing. What we are also doing is asking ourselves, why? Why is it so expensive? And it turns out we are a university, we provide for the higher education needs of California, but we also buy lumber and building materials and labor for construction projects on the same market that everyone else does. So at the end of the day, our projects even though we're smart about them, we design them to be effective and efficient, they are expensive. And we're now looking at, okay, what other levers could we implement to make those even more affordable? The Chancellor, our new Chancellor, Chancellor May, has implemented a housing task force, an affordability housing task force, with the idea that that group could kind of take a fresh look at affordability for student housing. And through this spring, the task force is meeting with experts, talking to different student groups on campus, I think reaching out to other campuses and trying to ask the question, what else? Beyond just building more, beyond just guarding against inflation in the Davis market and providing more housing on campus, are there other levers that the campus could be looking out for? So that task force will be writing a draft report and then issuing their findings to the Chancellor, I think, at the beginning of summer. David, could you help me if I missed any items you wanted me to hit on?
I think that's good. I mean, if people have more questions, they can ask.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you for the opportunity to highlight the public comment period ending May 29th. And I think my personal interest is really, I'm very curious to see how this conversation evolves tonight. And some of the conversations I've had on the issue of affordability really go into different areas of affordability. First with, well, how do you define affordability? Or what techniques should we think about for the next 10 years? And then other people say, no, it's the next 2 years. So I'm really interested to hear, okay, what from this forum, how does that dialogue evolve? And I'm hoping that I can be available and responsive to any questions. So I think that's it for me.
All right, pass the mic down to the mayor here.
Well, I try to avoid a lot of personal reflection because I don't think it serves well to always be talking about yourself. But I'm coming to the end of my time on council, and I want to reflect back personally, and I said this to a group earlier today, about what my goals were coming in. I made it clear to people when I was running for office, you can look at my campaign literature, that I was really going to be looking at opportunities to create more multifamily residents in the city. Keep in mind, I was running for office at a time when no new multifamily residence houses had been built for, at that time it was almost a decade, now it's well beyond that. I came to Davis at a time when vacancy rates were 0.4% and were going down to 0.2%. I had children that were trying to, were growing up here and then trying to move out on their own, as my son is a 26-year-old, and we're struggling to find housing. My daughter's gone. I said my goal was going to be to pursue that. I never said anything but that. Unlike the university, though, I don't control the levers of construction. The city doesn't build housing. Even when we have sites that have been set aside to build affordable, we don't build it. We do an RFP process and we let someone else build it along parameters that we've set. So we are waiting for people to come forward with projects that meet critical needs. I believe that what we have around us in the fields around Davis is the richest farmland in the world. I really want to be careful about, and many of you have grown up in California, I want to be careful about sprawling out on that with low density housing, the kind of stuff that you see all over this town. Can't do more of that. So I thought it was a slam dunk. Everyone will support denser multifamily housing. After all, Davis is the environmental capital of the world. Davis is a place where people really think critically about moving out of their vehicles and walking and biking. And therefore, if we can build multifamily dense housing close to where people go to school and work, people will embrace it massively. And I was dead wrong about that sentiment. To the point where I have to look myself in the mirror every morning and ask, am I truly that far out of step with this community? And perhaps I am. We've approved a grand total of 3 multifamily projects since I got on council. First one was Nishi, which was voted down. Sean was against it. Sorry, Sean, I understand why.
I was gonna say it anyway.
We were sued. We were sued on the EIR and we were sued on the affordable. We prevailed on both, but we lost the vote. We then approved Sterling. I thought when Sterling came along, 700 student-oriented beds out by the post office, I said to staff, there's no one here to oppose this project. It's in a quasi-industrial area. I was wrong. We faced severe opposition, but we weren't sued. Third one we've approved is Lincoln 40. Same thing. Where's the opposition going to come from? We've been sued on the sequel. Nishi 2, actually it's 4. Now student-oriented beds with affordable to the point where this guy can actually support it. We've been sued on the sequel. Now, I can kind of joke about that, but what do we want is my question. Each time we don't build and our vacancy rate stays at 0.2% or 0.3%, let's not quibble over that, but the population needing housing in this town continues to grow, what are we doing? Well, we're pushing people to Dixon, to Vacaville, to Woodland, to Sacramento, to West Sacramento, and beyond. And the reality is this, you cannot call yourself a city that cares about the environment when you force people into their cars. The problem that I've experienced in this community, actually I can't tell you not to clap tonight, can I? The problem that I've experienced in this community is that we seem to have the idea that if the impact is not visible to us, then it does not exist. If we cannot see the impact of more cars on our streets from students living close to the university or people biking and walking, then that impact doesn't exist. And CEQA kind of gives us permission to treat it that way. Right? Well, if you don't count, if you don't build it, there's no impact. Well, we know that's not true. So we have before us, I think, some really critical choices. 60 to 70% of the rentals in this city are occupied by students. We're a university town. In California, there is no county that hosts a university that has a greater proportion of its population as student. We are a small rural county. That's what we are. We are a small rural county dominated by a massive university, and we need to house the people that come as close to that university as they can. That's been my objective. Nothing more. I'm not trying to make people's lives hell. I'm not trying to make your life difficult. I'm trying to figure out a way to equitably bring people close to where they're going to go to school so they're not creating greenhouse gases, so they can have a healthy lifestyle and walk and bike, so that they can have the joy of being close to a downtown that is actually quite lively and nice, if quaint. That's what my goal has been. That's what this council's goal has been. And at each turn, we find ourselves thwarted. And the result of that, I think, is twofold. Number one, we are creating an environmental impact. Maybe there's several points. Two, we are creating a situation where the state government may begin to take away our ability to plan locally. Do we want that? I would argue no, but I understand why they're doing it. Will we create the density that's going to allow for transit to really flourish even more than it does now? These are the knock-on effects of opposing projects that house people close to where they play and where they work and where they go to school. And we seem unwilling to look at those impacts. I'm really struggling now, as I leave office, realizing that we've left the taste in the mouth of students that we don't want you here. Since I'm not running for office, this is me say, we want you here. And we want you here in a way that allows you to live close to that place you go every single day. I could say more. I need to say more about things like affordability. But fundamentally, I think what I've struggled with is how do we give the community everything it wants? Green buildings, large contributions to infrastructure, help us build that bridge over the railroad tracks, help us build that pathway under the railroad tracks, depending on where you are. You pay for it, give us green buildings, give us lots of solar, and give us 35 to 40% affordable. And then get your normal return on investment, because you are investors. I mean, no one's doing this for free. No one is doing this for free. It doesn't make them evil. So we want all of those things to happen. The question is, where are the trade-offs? So every time I say yes, make it greener, I know I'm giving fewer beds that are affordable. I know that. I mean, these are real trade-offs. And so I don't have a solution. I don't have a solution. Having sat up there and listened to you come and speak to the council, having sat up there and listened to the opposition, having pushed the university as hard as I can. I said to someone today, I've met with Matt, I've met with the chancellor, I've met with the planning staff over there probably a dozen times. There's not been a single conversation that's not been about housing. It's always been about how we're going to achieve this together. So we have some issues that we need to talk about, and we need to decide what it is we want to be as a city. I want a city that's welcoming to students. I want a city with dense high-rise housing close to where people work. I haven't been able to achieve that. I'm challenging the next council to figure out a way to get there, and for the community to back off on the constant lawsuits that are making it difficult for us to do anything at all in a cost-effective way. By the way, I'll just repeat it. We have prevailed on every lawsuit since I got on council.
It's going to be hard following up a speech like that. So my name is Michael Gotham. I'm an ASUCD president. I'm here to represent the voices of all the different students and all the different struggles that students are going through right now to get more housing. Mayor Davis talked about we need to decide as a city what we want to do. Do we want to be green? Do we want to have housing? But for students, the two are both inseparable and in need. We need more housing. And this doesn't just come from the university. This comes from the university, this comes from the city, this comes from everyone and everywhere. The 0.2% of a vacancy rate makes it impossible for us to find rent. And it's not just about the extreme situations that were brought up with the intern who couldn't find housing in December. This has to do with developers being able to do whatever they want to students because they know that they have no other options. We need more housing because it's fair, and we need more housing because that will ensure that students are able to pursue the education that they need and that they deserve, while being able to live in a way that isn't even necessarily comfortable, but just being able to live near Davis. The further away they are, the worse it is for the environment, the worse it is for the city, and the worse it is for the students. I think my speech is going to be a little bit shorter than Mayor Davis's. Thank you.
Sure. So my name is Sean Raycraft. I have been an activist here in town for several years now, always working on behalf of working poor people. I am a shop steward at the South Davis Safeway. I just came from work actually. And I've worked there for 11 years. During that time, I have seen the quality of life for many of my members, working poor folks. So a lot of them who are students, their quality of life has declined over that 11 years. And why is that? Well, a lot of times you can say that their quality of education is in decline. The cost of their education is skyrocketing. The cost of their rent is skyrocketing. My wife recently graduated UC Davis with $30,000 in debt, and I'm glad it's only at that number. And for me, like Rob said, I was against the last Nishi project. I did not meet my exacting standards, and I was probably wrong about that. So what happened? Well, last summer, I found out that some of my members were actually homeless. They could not find a place to stay. And that was like a tire screeching stop moment, stop the record, all that. Like, well, what is going on? Why can't folks find housing? There's just no housing for people, for my people. And why is that? Well, the university keeps expanding, putting pressures on our rental market, and we just have not built any housing in this town. in the last 20 years that suits my folks or students. They're all competition for the same resources. I'm happy to say that like I've helped my members find housing. One of them lives in a mini dorm. It's a 4-bedroom house. There are 13 people that live there. He shares a living room with somebody else, and he pays $400 a month. That's absolutely absurd. His privacy is a sheet that's lifted across the room. I know that sounds extreme, but he doesn't have any other choice. He doesn't have a car. He can't, move out of town and commute in, right? This month alone, I've helped 3 longtime friends move out of Davis because they cannot afford the rent increases that are coming for next year. 3. People I've known for 10 plus years. People that are my age. It's a crisis, and we need to do something as a community to address this issue, because this is something that affects everybody. Whether you're a homeowner, whether you're a renter like me, or you're somebody in your mid-30s, or whether you're a student, like whether you're a senior and you're angry about that mini dorm down the street. The conditions of the rental market are, the lack of student housing is affecting everybody's quality of life, no matter who you are. So we as a community have a responsibility as leaders within this community to advocate for solutions. And I, for one, am gonna miss Rob very much, because I think he understands these issues and wants to actually do something about it. And I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic that, by doing things like what we're doing here tonight, and, through the activism of a lot of the next generation of college students, that something can be done, that political capital can be generated to counter some of that no-growth political infrastructure. And a lot of those folks see me as a turncoat, but frankly, I don't care. Like, I'm more interested in actually doing the right thing for my people, for like the people who don't have a voice, for those who get displaced and just take it because they don't think that they can do anything about it. So. That's a little bit of like what I'm about. I'm happy to pass the mic.
Hello, my name is Tony Sandoval, and I am a student at UC Davis. I am a third-year transfer from Fresno City College, and I think I can attest to the gentleman who spoke before me more so than I can the other gentleman who spoke prior to him. I do come from low-income family. I am a single mother who is a mother of a toddler, and we came from Fresno by ourselves to be here at UC Davis, and so that I could better her life in doing what I do. And being here in the community has given me, I guess, a sense of pride to be doing that for her, but it has also been very difficult and stressful. Being a resident at Solano Park, I am so thankful that I was accepted there, because I was told here coming to UC Davis that was the only apartment complex available on campus that my daughter was allowed to live at, and that if I was not accepted to Solano Park Apartments, that I would have to go looking outside of the campus, which from other students I've heard is a nightmare to go have to do. So I was praying that I would get into Solano Park so that my daughter and I wouldn't have to deal with what all the other students are having to deal with. And for the first time in my life, the thing that has been holding me back this whole time has actually helped me in finding housing. It's taken me being a low-income student who is a single mother to be accepted into this housing. And that's frustrating to know, and I don't know how else to share this without sharing my personal story, because I feel as though that is what the community of UC Davis exists of, is these personal stories. If you don't listen to these personal stories and you don't hear these extreme cases of what students are saying, then you're not paying attention to what's happening. You're not paying attention to what's going on. Instead, you are serving a community who can afford the communities that you're building, and instead of serving all of the different students who exist on this campus. I don't feel as though I'm here representing myself, and I feel silly saying that out loud, but that's the truth. I'm not here to represent me and my daughter. I'm here to represent all of the low-income families who are at Solano Park. I'm here to represent all of the families who are underrepresented and do not have the voice that I have to be able to speak in front of all of you. I am a mother who's a part of a Welfare to Work program, and if it wasn't for being a part of Welfare to Work, I would not be here at this campus because I could not afford this campus. There's no way. I have to be a welfare mom for my daughter and I to better our lives and to do things, and I've had to make sacrifices with time with my daughter here on this campus so that I can make moves that will better her life, not mine, hers, because I'm not going to see the change she is. So in order to do all of this, I have to be a part of a community, get a babysitter so I can participate in town hall meetings that I have been asked to speak at and represent. I am not getting paid by a student organization to represent all of the students. I am here because I choose to be, and I'm here because I care about the students at our school. I care about my community who is living next to me, my neighbors who welcomed me as a single mother, and I no longer felt alone because of my neighbors. I made friends within my community who were experiencing the same things as me, whose kitchen sinks are leaking, whose toilets are leaking, whose bathroom sinks are leaking. How in the world do I move into an apartment and ask my maintenance man to fix my entire apartment? I have no idea how to do that because I've come from apartment complexes from low-income families before where those requests just aren't taken seriously. So how do I, as a student mother who's head of household, ask that of my maintenance man? I don't. I wrap towels, I fold them next to my toilet, I wrap towels, I put them underneath my dish holder, and when those get soaked, I throw them in their own dirty basket because I don't put them with my dirty laundry, and I wash those same 4 towels over and over and over, and I just keep soaking up the leaks because there's no way I'm going to have Peter come and seal my toilet and seal my sink and tighten this and tighten that. You know what I've done instead? I've gotten used to living that way. Why? Because people from those low socioeconomic backgrounds can be resilient. Those people can adjust, and those people can learn to live in those conditions. I don't need a new apartment. I don't need the brand new amenities. I don't need all of those extras. I just need a sink that doesn't leak. I just need a toilet that doesn't leak. I just need things that will make my daughter and I feel as though we are not a part of the low-income family housing at UC Davis. I just want to feel as though I don't have to worry about those things, and I've finally learned that I don't need to be a part of a huge student organization for my voice to be heard and for me to represent those low-income families. And I will continue to be a part of this as long as I'm a part of Davis, and then after I earn my education, I will go back home and I will help my community in doing things that will help the low-income socioeconomic students that I came from. And I only know how to say this to you guys in the way that I have this evening, y'all, because I have learned in Davis to say y'all instead of you guys. I have presented this way to y'all the only way I know how, and the only way that I know how to speak the voice that I have. That is the community in which I represent, and I am no longer ashamed to be a part of that community. I am so proud to come from that community because it puts me in a very small community in a big world of other kids who have things handed to them way more easily than I do. And I used to be very angry because of that, and I finally gotten to a place where I am so enjoying the struggle because that is what makes me who I am and will allow me to help the people who live with me and be a part of their struggle. And I just hope that the voices or the people who spoke before me are very understanding of this is more real than you're willing to admit. And I can be a voice for not just myself, but many other families who are a part of what I'm a part of.
Thank you, Tony. I think Tony's talk really sums up what this evening is about. This is about personal stories. This is about people bearing witness to what's going on in the community, because as I've had conversations within the broader community, I don't think most people understand what students are having to go through in order to get an education. So hopefully now in the next hour, we will hear some more from students and also community members. So any students who'd like to share your experiences and your story, please line up on the left side of the room. And any community members, please line up on the right side of the room. We will try to get through as many as possible. I don't know how many people will end up speaking. I I hope a lot of people, because especially from the students, we need to hear your voice. So go ahead.
Is this on? Okay, very good. I am Ellie White. I'm a graduate student in civil engineering at UC Davis. And I have many comments. I'll go to the back of the line and then come back so that everyone can get a chance, but I have 4. I'll be at the mic 4 times if I get the chance. Right now I have 1 comment and 1 question. First, the Chancellor's Affordable Housing Task Force has been meeting for a couple of weeks. Interested students were not allowed to sit in. It's a closed meeting with very little information coming out. Here's some of the things that are being said behind closed doors. Matt, you said you have to ask, what is affordability? You said that here too. Is it relative to the Davis market? Is it based on how much money people earn? Is it based on how much money people have? Is it based on comparison with other universities? Let me answer that question for you right now. It's 30% of income, including amenities. Students have answered this question with a resolution that passed ASUCD and GSA not long ago. Michael Gotham, you voted for the resolution. Thank you for that. There were no oppositions in either house to this definition, and only 1 abstention at the GSA. David Campbell, the chair of the task force, has already received this copy. This isn't a question you all should be answering, because we know how you'll want to answer it, in a way that will cost the most to the students and the least to the university. So let me just solidify: 30% of income, including amenities, utilities. That's the answer. Matt, you've also said that at the Affordable Housing Task Force, and I quote, feasibility of affordability is always a tightrope challenge. I would add that I see no problem in building more above-market housing in order to bring in money. This in turn relieves demand pressure and should have a general price reduction effect for modest housing. Thank you, Matt, for making that clear while you're at the Chancellor's Affordable Housing Task Force. Do you really want to advocate for another West Village type of housing that then goes 27% vacant? In this market where people are without homes, it's completely despicable to have houses without people. I'd like you to explain yourself here.
You can respond if you want, or
Yeah, so, to the factual items. Is West Village 25% vacant right now? The answer is no. It's,
How vacant is it?
I think there's a few units that could have students doubled up in rooms. And let me explain, it was at 100% occupancy. About 2 years ago, we said, wait a minute, what are some immediate levers that we could do to add more supply to the campus inventory? And what we did is we allowed the developer of West Village to double up some of the rooms, where previously there was a lease requirement that there only be 1 student in each bedroom. We said it would be better and faster than building new.
You're missing the point. You're advocating for above-the-market housing while talking at an affordable housing task force.
Yeah,
Can you
okay,
address that?
I sure can.
We're getting in the
Do you want me to explain the West Village circumstance or just go through?
Answer this question. Do you want above-the-market affordable, that's not affordable?
Sure, the context of that was a question of what levers are available to create more affordable housing. One lever is to build housing that could be above market and take extra revenue from those units and put that money into subsidizing affordable units. At the end of the day, an affordable unit has construction costs that need to be paid for. One option of finding extra money is to build housing, and if there are students who can afford to live in that housing and pay extra, they would in fact be cross-subsidizing or subsidizing the affordable housing. So if that's a lever that is appealing to the Affordability Housing Task Force, I would say that's one option for them to consider. So that's the context of my comment. And I think in the hour or so that I had the opportunity to speak with the task force, there was a lot of really good dialogue, but taking small quotes and trying to make a small point about that is not really appropriate.
The dialogue was about affordability.
Correct, absolutely.
You are not talking to affordability.
No, I'm talking about one lever for creating affordability. So it's a good point. Thank you.
Okay, no, you're next.
Okay. I'm actually kind of in the middle because I'm a community member on that side and my husband is a grad student here at UC Davis. So I'm kind of speaking for the two of us and our two children who are ages 4 and almost 6. So we actually started here in Vacaville because we couldn't afford to live in Davis. We couldn't find anything that was open. It was just impossible. So we lived in a room in Davis with our one child at that point. And then we moved to Woodland after that, got a little bit closer. Meanwhile, we have one car, and my husband would bike from Woodland all the way to Davis to go to grad school every day. And then my kids got to the age where they were going to preschool and school, and my husband would bike with my child on the back of the bike all the way to Davis to get her into a Davis preschool so she could more easily get into the kindergarten here. We finally found a place in Davis a year and a half ago, which is great. We were super excited to finally be in the community. Meanwhile, I've become really become attached to this community. I'm on the board of directors for Community Care Health Centers. I'm sorry, I'm really nervous right now. I'm also, a Girl Scout leader here in Davis. I am the founder of the Yola County Co-op Diaper Program, and I help low-income parents. So I've become a community member here in Davis, and I think that's important while my husband is working really, really hard to get his PhD. However, I'm also a teacher. I'm a substitute teacher here. And as you know, substitute teachers here in Davis do not make nearly as much as they do in Woodland. However, I am a part of this community, and I want to help this community. However, my apartment, which has been wonderful until now, has decided to up our rent 81%, and they have given us a 32-day notice, which is, from what I understand, illegal. So if anybody can give me some legal advice, I'd love it. But I just want you to see the reality of this, because we've been fighting so hard to get here in Davis, and then we finally get here, and we get a notice on our door saying that our rent is going to be up 81% with 32 days notice.
Who's the owner?
Sterling Property Management. Anyway, this is not okay. I have a family of 4, husband and grad student. I am teaching in the schools, I'm helping with your children, and we can't afford to live here if this is going to be happening to us and other parents that have, student family. So, I'm a little livid about it, as you can see. And another problem that I think needs to be addressed is, the bus system here. Like, there's no bus that goes to East 8th Street. So we're in Davis, but we're not near campus. We have to fight all the way from East 8th Street past the cemetery. There's no bus that goes that either. So if it's a rainy day, we have issues. Anyway, that's what I have to say. That's my story. I think it's important that you know that this kind of stuff is going on. So as soon as we get in, we're excited, and then this happens. What are we supposed to do? We put so much time and energy into this city, and we're just suddenly being pushed out. So anyway, that's my story.
Thank you for your story.
I have an announcement. There's a silver Buick 75JU985 that is apparently blocking a garage, and somebody needs to be able to get out. So if that is somebody's vehicle, can you please move it? Okay, I'm not seeing any takers, so I don't know what to tell you.
Might be farmer's market.
Yeah.
That's the other possibility. Okay, Rob wanted to say something.
Look, if people are having situations like this one, we do have a new renters ordinance, and we do have a resource person in the office. I can't speak to the legality of what's happening, but we have resource people who can. So anybody that's here tonight, and if you feel you're in a situation like that, I'm not going to promise a miracle, but I will promise that I'll have someone reach back to you. Send me an email, rdavis@cityofdavis, just rdavis@cityofdavis.org. We can look into it. I mean, we do not have an ordinance that allows us to cap increases in rent. I know some folks want to work on that. It's not happening right now. We do have, however, advice that we can get you from Yolo County Housing and other legal services to make sure that what's happening is within the law.
I had the law right in front of me that said you have to give 60 days
All right,
notice.
well, then we can
Yeah.
look into it, and we can follow up with the landlord and say what you're doing is illegal. I mean, we have the possibility of doing that, but I need an
Right.
email with the details of the property. Listen, I work with international students on campus. I see them being taken advantage of frequently. A lot of times, all it takes is for me to hand them my business card, City of Davis, and never hear from them again. I think if we have someone call and say what's going on, that will help a lot.
Okay.
So, email.
I will do that, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
My name is Dan Carson, and I appreciate the introduction earlier. I am one of your candidates for Davis City Council. I think under the speaking rules, the 2-to-1 ratio, if it's going to be like the age disparity that the 2-to-1 is based on, given Aaron and my disparity, it ought to be 3-to-1 at this point, in my case. The main point I want to make tonight is that if we're going to make progress on this issue, we need to work as a city and with the university in a collaborative fashion. There's challenges on both sides. I was part of that campaign for Nishi 1.0 that Sean there helped to. If we flipped 350 votes the other way, we would have had 2,000 condos and student apartments coming within the next few years. We missed a chance to do that. I'm supporting the project that the replacement minus the economic development component that would help the city a lot, but I think we're so desperately in need of the housing that I think we have to go there. When I see a student living in a car on Lake Boulevard just about a block from my house, it tells me that there's a humanitarian need here that we just absolutely have to address. It's unconscionable if we don't. But we need to be very careful and work hard on both sides to do this in a way that works with our community, because we care as a community about affordable housing and students, but we also care about preserving open space and ag land in the small town feel we have in this community. So we've got to work together through those issues. I find it interesting. I'm a supporter of Measure J&R because I think it's a much better process for us to work through some of the biggest decisions that we'll ever face this city. But some of the folks who are also very supportive of Measure J&R are willing to go into court and, if necessary, overturn the will of the people by going to a judge, a one-person veto. I think there's an inconsistency in that that we need to think about. We can't constrain anyone's constitutional rights to pursue legal issues, but there is an inconsistency in that. On the other side of the ledger, I've read the LRDP draft, I've read the EIR draft, and I can tell you there are some very significant issues there that will create burdens for our community on traffic, impacts on our local roads, impacts on transit. We have to work through those issues. And I think a collaborative approach is a way better approach than ending up in a lawsuit like we were 15 years ago. And so when I see you want to go right to the regents in July, I would plead early and make the point, please give us some time to work these things out so that we can avoid being backed into a corner in another lawsuit. We don't need that. It's much better to take a little bit more time and try to work things out. I'll leave it there.
Thank you.
Good
evening, everyone. My name is Aaron. I too am a student. First, I just want to say thank you to the panel for being here. It's very rare that community members get the chance to ask questions of both community members and policymakers in the same space. That I personally have never seen that ever happen before. And I lived in DC for 2 years, so we expect it to at least happen now. My question goes to you, Matt Dulcich. The City of Davis has recently made some advancements in how it attempts to require affordable housing for new developments, changing from a 35% required level down to a new 15% level. Something that is achievable, seeing as in the past we had state and federal money to provide federal housing. Is there an interest with the university to make the same kind of step? Would the university consider expanding its affordability requirements to the same levels as the city has? Requiring new construction to have 10-15% affordable?
Yeah. Okay, without the microphone, I'd say yeah, at this point, all options are on the table, and it's some of the stuff and first of all, is the mic really on for you guys? Because can everyone hear the comments that are, hello? There you go.
Oh, I'm just tall.
Okay. Yeah, so what I was saying is, yeah, all options are on the table. And it's some of the stuff I spoke about earlier in terms of the items we're doing now on the current projects, really lower amenities, smaller units, base rent, initial rents at a lower level, and then provisions to restrict the increases on those rents, those kind of things. And over time, particularly that last one of maximum increases every year, those on-campus units will become more affordable compared to the rest of the community. And that's not just for a set portion of each building, it would be for the entire building. So those are the things we're working on now. And then there's the Affordability Housing Task Force looking at what else from a group that really has not been actively building projects, but can just really take a fresh look at other campuses, other communities, the Davis effort, what else could come forward. So I'd say, yeah, at this point, everything is on the table.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, my name is Caroline Cusick. I'm a PhD candidate in anthropology at UC Davis, and I live in Solano Park student family housing. I want to thank Tony for talking about the experiences of Solano Park families and parents. I have lived in Solano Park for several years. Before that, I lived in Orchard Park, which was the student family housing that the university tore down and still has not provided a proposal for replacing with family-friendly affordable housing. At the time that the university first announced their plans to demolish Solano and Orchard Park, a lot of families got together and got together a petition with hundreds of people signing it, saying they wanted Solano and Orchard to be replaced with affordable, family-friendly, green space-filled housing that would be close to campus, because parents need to be close to campus to be able to walk and get to and from classes. The university hasn't responded to this petition, and I think to hear the university talking about debating defining affordability when for so many years students and student families have been saying exactly what affordability means is pretty insulting. The university has a lot of levers, as Matt Dulcich put it, that they can change, but students and low-income folks and parents don't have a lot of levers they can change. You can't change what your income is, you can't change the background you're coming from, you can't change the resources that you're bringing to the university. But the university can do things like cut administrative salaries, stop spending money on things like this touchscreen wall that we see in the Welcome Center. If anybody's ever walked through that part of campus, you see a Welcome Center that makes you ask, who's welcome here? Who's this Welcome Center for? So in conclusion, I would just like to say that there doesn't need to be a debate about how to define affordability. Affordability should be based on the incomes of students, and when the university bases their definition of what counts as so-called affordable housing on market rates, they're pushing out students from low-income communities, they're pushing out students from underrepresented communities, and they're making a very clear decision about who they want to be here and who they want to be welcome. So I think the university needs to take responsibility and actually make a written commitment to build affordable housing, to replace Solano and Orchard Park with affordable family-friendly housing, and to build more affordable housing. There doesn't need to be a debate about this. We know what affordability is.
Seaman.
Step up to the mic, please.
Well, let's do this. How's that? Better? You can't hear me? I'm deaf, and I hear people over there. I'm a resident of Davis, been so for a long time. I'm a graduate of UC Davis. I first came to Davis to UC Davis in 1967. I was an employee for 18 years. I was a union representative for 5 or 6 years for the service and clerical workers, and after that, for another 5 years for the lecturers and librarians. So I've been a member of what's called the campus community and the Davis community. Now, I want to just ask a couple of quick questions. These are like 1, 2, 3 word answer questions. And the first one would probably go to Rob. Do you know what percentage of single-family homes in Davis are owner-occupied? You had some stats on the renters. What percentage were? Just roughly.
I think it's 40% at this point.
40%. Okay.
Yeah.
And would you know how many of those would be? Just a rough number. How many? It would be thousands.
I don't have that.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. Now the other question I have is for Matt, and that would be, what percentage of Davis faculty, Senate faculty or tenure-track faculty, live in Davis?
I think it's about 60%.
60%.
And I was going to try to back up Rob and say it's hard to come up with the exact statistics on the fly, but if you want to force a number out of me, I'll pick 60.
When I represented staff and even lecturers, not maybe so much librarians, most of them don't live in Davis. They can't afford because the university doesn't pay enough. So we have this problem. It's the biggest employer in the county, one of the biggest in the regions. Okay, doesn't pay enough. Now this is a general question. What's more unaffordable than housing in Davis? UC education. When I first came here, I basically came for free. Now, what hasn't changed? They say affordability is really important, but what I see and what I saw in all my union work was that Senate faculty, research faculty, they've done just as well as inflation or better. Now we have the same level of education. You get out, guess what? I just saw the stats. I looked it up today. 1960 and 2015, starting salary in real dollars for college graduates about the same. But it costs 12 times as much to get that same thing. And here's what I think happens. Because the same reason they don't have any leverage to get lower rents, they don't have any leverage in compared to the rest, compared to the faculty, compared to the administration, even somewhat compared to the staff. What the university has chosen to do in this state and around the country for 40 years is, instead of standing up to the legislature and the far right about public funding for education that should be free, nope. You took it from the easiest place to get it, the students. So they go into all that debt. Now I asked about where the faculty live. Rob, here's another question for you. Who do you think mostly voted no when the projects came in to vote no? Was it a bunch of renters, or was it the homeowners in this town who have homes that put them in, if they've got it all paid for, they're all 1%.
I sense that's a rhetorical question.
So they are all going to retire. Now, well, the faculty is 5 to 1% if you look at what people make overall. But they have it darn good. Now, here's my advice. You want to change this? Every one of you, you go into your classrooms, you ask your professor where they live, what kind of house they live in, what does it cost, and whether they have conditions like she talked about. You have to do that. It doesn't do any good. We saw what happened with Kitay and that whole pepper spray thing. You take it to the administration, you take it to Napolitano or whatever, and that's their job, is to stand there and be able to take it. But who they're really working for is that 1%, your faculty. And those faculty, here's the real killer, those faculty know way better than most of us do, let alone way better than the general population, what has gone on.
All right, Richard.
And they're not standing up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Connor, you're up.
So my name is Connor. I'm a grad student in physics. My questions are also mainly for Matt. I think it's interesting that Matt is getting a lot of questions. I think that's in part because unlike the city, the university does not have very many regular open meetings. And also the leaders of the university are not elected. But my first question is, in terms of the cost of on-campus housing, it's true that building materials and whatnot are the same for the university as elsewhere, but we heard that a lot of on-campus housing is actually more expensive than housing in the city of Davis, so I wonder what the justification for that is. And my second question goes back to Caroline's point about leverage and if you're really considering all the options, because I think there are a lot of possible options, but I wonder if there is a confinement of the options that are being considered. So for instance, cutting admin salaries, reducing the policing, reducing the chancellor mansion, or turning it into a building that's actually used for other purposes, because the chancellor is perfectly capable of affording their own housing. So there are a lot of places that funding goes in the university that aren't even considered for being devoted to workers and students. So are you actually considering all of the options, or are you confining it to a narrow window that fits with the status quo for the most part? And then my last question is actually for Michael, and it's, what can ASUCD do to pressure the university to reprioritize students and workers over administrators and other privatized interests? Because task forces and committees only go so far, they have their place, but we really need to exercise direct power and direct action to truly get these things.
Yeah, there were three there, right? One was are we considering all options? Well, let me start in order. The first was the cost of housing on campus, and the number that our campus housing is so much more expensive. And I've seen some of David's analysis on the Vanguard, and some of it is right on. I think one nuance that's not really been explained is there are basically two types of campus housing. One is dorm housing, which we call residence halls, and those are the numbers that David gave in the early part of this presentation. For example, Tercero is dorm housing. And that's a type of housing that is not like having a typical apartment. It's where the students really are living in a kind of transition year from their home life, and then this is their first entry year or maybe a transfer year coming to university. They have custodial service that cleans the restrooms, that takes care of a lot of the common areas. There are support staff in the buildings, and other programming efforts that really build up the expenses of that living experience. So apples to oranges is one way to say it, and the next effort would be to really get further into the details and figure out, well, okay, is it more expensive compared to UC Irvine dorm housing or Santa Cruz dorm housing? And I haven't done that, but just wanted to point that out as one kind of building the shared knowledge of this forum and exchanging ideas and having that dialogue. I think it's great to ask me a lot of questions, and I'll try to answer where I can. I think the other one, Connor, was, are we considering all of the options? And I think it's both yes and no. The yes is, yeah, all of the realistic options are on the table. And, you know, if you wanted to say, well, people aren't working hard enough, I think there's been over the last year a kind of heroic effort to launch these West Village and Orchard Park projects, working nights and weekends to get them on the same schedule as the LRDP EIR, and really try to hit a very early occupancy date for those projects. So if cutting staff salaries would somehow motivate people to work more and work harder, obviously it wouldn't. I think at the end of the day, people work on campus because it's a job and because they have a passion for the university, and asking to take money out of that effort is not something that's on the table. And the employees who are working hard on the campus need to live somewhere, and housing is expensive in Davis. It's expensive throughout California. So again, pointing to realistic options, and the purpose of this forum is trying to really say, what can we do? Maybe it's efforts that are what's in the 2-year horizon, what's in the 5-year horizon. And then the last one was, help me out, for Michael. Okay.
Perfect, thank you. So thank you, Connor, for asking what ASUCD can do. So I'm going to start by just answering with a couple of anecdotes and then with a couple of very concrete steps. So I met with the chancellor last week, and one of the topics that we talked about was the remodeling of the recreational pool. And I did some preliminary research on about how much this renovation should take if done privately. Just you have a plot of land and you're rebuilding your pool on it. And I brought that number up to him, and I don't remember what it was anymore, and he joked, you know, well, we're a university. This is going to automatically cost 2 or 3 times as much. So I think a lot of it, of the cost on campus, is coming from regulations and rules that we're putting on ourselves as a university. But on to what ASUCD can do. There's a few different things. One thing that we've done a little bit over the past year that we're doing a lot more this quarter is writing resolutions that get sent to the chancellor, that get sent to the mayor, to city council, to the newspapers, expressing student support for various housing projects. One thing on top of that I know that Josh did, and something that I'm doing right now, sorry, Josh, who was the last president, one other thing that we've been doing is going to the developers and saying, if you want our support, we demand the following, I guess the word is concessions for them. Like, we demand a certain level of affordable housing, we demand a certain amount of units. On top of that, ASUCD is comprised of a lot of individuals, and there are different senators running on different platforms, and a lot of them, and historically often, are running on housing, and they are going to developers. They're going to register students to vote, so that the end goal is basically to, like you mentioned, the university isn't elected, but city council is, and city council sets a lot of the rules on housing. So one thing we're doing this year in cooperation with organizations on campus is getting students to vote. And being that change, in order to get a city council that cares about all of the members of its community, not just the ones that are older and wealthier, but the students and the ones that traditionally don't vote and the ones that don't have a lot of political capital. So I hope that answers your question.
Hi, I'm Adam Hatafi. I'm just another student at UC Davis, and I have a few questions for you, Matt. Everybody just has questions for you. So I have quite a few. The first one being, earlier when the first individual here was asking the question, was that why is the university having over the market price buildings? My question, you said it's to subsidize the lower income facilities. My question is, if you have over the market rate housing, doesn't that change what the market rate is, and then in long term change the definition of affordability so that we're just back where we started? My second question is, isn't that just an example of how expensive on-campus housing is affecting the city housing market rates in general? One room in a dorm building costs as much as to each individual costs as much as a room in an apartment building off campus. If I'm a developer and I see that students can pay $900 for a third of a room, I think to myself, oh, well, they can pay $1,000 for one whole room, right? That drives the market rate up. And then my last question, which follows from that, is that where's the university getting its construction materials? Because you keep going back to, oh, we need to pay for this stuff, but everybody else who builds off campus also needs to pay for that stuff. And housing rates off campus are not remotely as expensive as they are on campus. So we're not using more stuff. We are actually using yet less stuff because we have 3 people in one room instead of one whole apartment. How is it that it's costing more?
I'll try to go quick just to move along. But your main point is really astute. The point that requiring projects to build affordable housing, someone has to pay for that. And it's usually the units that are the market rate units. So who's paying for affordable housing if it's a city project? It's the other residents in the apartments. So those residents are paying an extra increment, and that resets the market for the market rate and illustrates to other apartment owners what they could charge, and the same effect happens on campus, where, for example, West Village, we built those units, actually allowed a private developer to build those units, and did not set rent caps, but we do have a provision where ground rent, what the developer pays back to the university, that money is put back into student financial aid. So in that case, it's an effort for the students who are able to afford to live in West Village, and I think we've all seen, a student might be driving a Mercedes or a Maserati. That student paying the rent at West Village is actually putting money back into student financial aid. That's one lever, but you're right, it also resets the market. So that's part of the basket of the Affordability Housing Task Force. How can we crack that and come out in a different way is a really good question.
So can you also answer the last question as to why is it that dorms and on-campus apartments so much more expensive than their off-campus counterparts when the construction material that you use for dorms is actually much less than construction materials that apartments use?
Right. So I don't have the data. I would really be interested in seeing a campus apartment in Colleges of LaRue would be a really good example. The rates of that apartment compared to a similar aged project in the city of Davis, that would be a really interesting comparison. So we would take out is it dorm housing? No, really do apartment to apartment, same age, same building construction type, and it would be interesting to see what that difference is.
Thank you.
One thing. So I think it's important to note, market rates of apartments may go up, and they have. Affordability is not linked to the cost of the apartment. Affordability is already been pointed out. It's linked to income. So, in a sense, what's happening is as the market rates go higher, the actual subsidy for the affordable becomes greater, right? Because you have that's what in a sense is what being lost by not being able to rent all the apartments out. So what we've done as a city, which I don't know that the university can do, and we talked about 35% and now it's 15%, is to say to developers, you've got to set aside in perpetuity, X% of the units that will be affordable at a given level, very low and extremely low income. We have very few, and I think it's important, we have very few units in the city that are completely affordable in perpetuity, and those were all built on land that was dedicated at the time of construction of a large development like Mace Ranch, and then sought tax subsidies and what we used to have in the city called redevelopment agency. That's how we built wholly 100% affordable. The people that are living in those are not students, because almost all of them were built with federal money that excludes students. What we can do with the private development, Nishi, Lincoln 40, is we can bring in affordability for students. I expect it to be legally challenged by someone in the community who would say it's only for students, probably someone sitting in this room. But the point is we can at least offer it to students. And that is in perpetuity based on income, not based on the rate of the other market housing.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to add one more thing into that, and that is, it's really easy to look at West Village as just nothing but a cash cow, where everyone there is really, really wealthy and is able to live there easily and drive around in a Mercedes and a Maserati. But there's also a lot of students that live in West Village because there's nowhere else to live. That is the only place available on campus. And, you know, yes, it's above market rate. You know, it might be $900, whereas there might be, you know, it's occupied, but a property somewhere in the city that's $600 or $700, but they're living there because there's no other option, and they're really, really struggling to make ends meet, but their only other option is to not live anywhere at all. So they basically cast aside everything else that they want to do just to be able to afford there. So it's not just people living or driving Maseratis and you know, Ferraris there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. David, thank you for hosting. Mayor, thank you for your service, your eloquence, and for getting it. You understand renters in this community. Now I would like to address Matt. I came here
Thank you very much.
I came here because I want you to send a message to the Chancellor. My husband's 71. He's a UC retiree. He's come to the end of his working life. He's not well. We thought we could age in place in Davis as renters. I don't think we can. Our complex, we're surrounded by students piling up, 5, 6, 7 students, couch surfing students that aren't even on the lease. The landlords are making a bundle off of the students and pushing out families and retirees. Please tell the Chancellor that the retired workforce that served all the campuses would like to retire in place. Thank you.
I grabbed for the mic because I thought you were done. But I want to say yes.
I just want the message to get out there. This is not just a student housing crisis. It has a ripple effect throughout the community, and it's affecting senior citizens. Thank you.
I will tell the Chancellor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Lucia Hacker and I'm a freshman at UC Davis and also one of the ASUCD senators. And I wanted to thank you all for being here tonight and for having this dialogue. I think it's so important. I am one of those people who lives on campus in the dorms. I live in Segundo, but I live in the really old part, the Reagan area, where indeed only 2 showers in our building actually have water pressure. So it is a struggle. But I wanted to talk about what it is like going out and looking for housing in Davis as a first-year student, especially if you're not one of those people who has a car or a way to get around the city very easily. It can be really cumbersome to have to go search for apartments and go meet with leasing offices and try to get your name on a list for a lottery, having no idea until February if you've even made it that far. And I've had seen my friends struggle to find apartments and wait till they found their lease locked down like a couple weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, not even sure where they're going to live. So I want to thank all of you who are here and having this dialogue because it is so important and there are so many things that we can address on campus housing with. It is really expensive to live on campus and luckily due to financial aid and student loans, you're able to defer some of those costs. But the second you move off of campus, that rent hits you right away. And there's not good resources to help freshmen learn what it is like to then have to take on and pay for their rent. We don't have a process right now that actually tries to help match freshmen with good apartments where the landlords are very student friendly. So there are so many things that I think we can do to support freshmen, and I know Maya is here. She's also a freshman, and I want to kind of have her speak on this too, so thank you.
So you've heard my name's Maya, I'm a freshman. I'm a Davis College Young's member. I'm also the youngest elected official within the Young Democratic Party of the state of California. It's not just developers and renters that are getting taken advantage of, it's also students. I live in the student housing. I was harassed verbally
my roommate's stuff was physically broken, and the university told us that after reporting it to our RA and having them write reports, that we were the ones who had to leave our room. That they legally couldn't do anything, and according to the housing policy, that they could not point at or could not tell me until 24 hours after that was the advice were given to us. They did not hold our prior roommate accountable. I pay an insane amount. My father does not have a stable income, but apparently my parents' income combined is too much to qualify for financial aid, even though there's overlapping years of me and my 4 siblings going to college. It's insane to be able to afford tuition, afford to be able to pay for housing and food. Many weekends that I have to beg my friends to come over so I can make something, or have them provide food for me because I have a 5-day meal plan. I live with 2 other individuals. I live in a room that's too small. I live in Laban Hall. We don't have real dressers. We live on bunk beds, and we have a storage unit that we share with our neighbors next door, which is not enough space for 3 females living in a room. It's cramped. It's not well regulated. To pay this amount of money, which I know I'm going to pay half the price, even with food accommodated in that budget, to live in pretty much it's hell. A lot of the time it's hot. And to feel the pressure of the people who run the housing to tell us we have to move. When we have tried to do, be responsible adults, it's terrible. That is one horror story. The second is I had to withdraw money that I had from my savings that I worked all summer to make sure that I had in place, to make sure I could put a down payment for an apartment that I wasn't guaranteed yet. Then I had 48 hours to complete legal documentation. I also had a guarantor, and they had to complete and get signed legal documentation and submit it back. I would have lost the apartment if I had not begged them to give me an extension. This is unacceptable from the university, taking advantage of students, especially freshmen. And if I hadn't gotten help and assistance because I jumped in and knew the housing crisis existed, I would not have an apartment next year. I'd probably be one of the students barely being able to afford rent in West Village. That's the reality of it, because that's what my roommate's going to pay right now. And we talked about who do we want in Davis? Who does the university and who does the developers want in Davis? And the reality is, when you go to your financial aid office and you're a student of color and you're there, or you're just any individual low-income family and you're realizing your tuition and your financial aid is going down next year and you can't live in Davis anymore, you're going home. That's the reality of it. Low-income families, low-income students, they're not able to afford living on campus because it's only guaranteed freshman year. The on-campus apartments, a lot of the times, are not well kept up. They are not nearly the same as quality, but you're still trying to fight. And at a certain point, you can't take out, I had savings, you can't take out money. That's the reality of it. So it's the displacement of the university saying who they want, and the displacement of the developers and the renters saying who they want in the community. Thank you.
I'm sorry about your situation, but here's my card, and if you can get in touch with me, I'll do a little check here and see if there's something I can do to help out.
I kind of wanted to follow up with the financial aid story with that because I had experienced winter quarter and I didn't mention it earlier because I had forgot to, but I was only given 1 week's notice when the financial aid office took $1,800 of a $3,000 scholarship I had earned, and I was told that I earned too much money in scholarships, so the school was going to take that scholarship money from me and apply it to my academic fees and then give me the balance of what was remaining. So rather than the $3,000 that I had budgeted for my last quarter rent and daycare, I was scrambling around at the welfare office in between classes trying to figure out how to come up with that additional $1,800 that the school took away and would not justify why they took it, other than you received too much money in scholarships. And that's backwards in my head, because if I received too much in scholarships, then my schooling should be paid for. But because I received too much money for scholarships in my situation and being what I am, the school takes it from me and then applies it to my school fees, which were already taken care of. So it's very confusing to me as to how the financial aid office operates, and the actual financial aid package that I had agreed upon before coming to Davis changed entirely when I was already locked into a lease and everything that I was financially responsible academically.
Hello, good evening. My name is Emily Mesa. I have been a resident of Davis since 2007 when I came here as a student myself. graduated in 2011. I came here tonight with a vague inclination of what I may or may not say. So I'll just tell you a little bit of my story. To start off, I want to recognize Tony for being here and sharing her story because it's inherently linked with, it's incredibly important for voices like yours to be heard. And it's inherently linked with the work that I've been doing for the last 6 years. After I graduated from Davis, I went and managed to get a job with the county. Mind you, the week after I graduated from Davis, I gave birth to my first child. And so I feel you on the not fitting that perfect mold of what a student should be. My work with the county has been an eligibility worker for the CalWorks program for approximately 5 years. I feel you. I have worked with families just like Tony's so many times. If she hadn't gotten into the student housing, I don't know what other options there would have been for her. A single mom with one child receiving cash assistance receives about $550, maybe perhaps it's gone up to $600 a month. Imagine her trying to compete with students, with other students that don't have families, for housing in this town. Just everybody think about that for a moment. $600 a month maximum. How is somebody going to find anything at that amount? And also facing the possibility of having to share a room for that amount with a child, with people you don't know. Just let that sit for a moment. What's that mean?
No.
Okay, so please just let that sit for a moment. The urgency is real. Like this problem of affordable housing, of the housing crisis, it is real and it needs to be solved as soon as possible. I have sat around in my work with the county as an eligibility worker. I'm now in homeless services, so it's an issue that's very dear to my heart. I have sat around for years so frustrated watching the community vote down project after project, thinking to myself, the people that are voting this down are sitting comfortable. They are not feeling the urgency. They do not understand just how important. Just how important this is that this is solved immediately. And I know that we're running a little late on time, but I just want, what happens here in Davis does not just affect Davis. Yes, it's important for Davis. I love Davis. I want Davis to be incredible. But also coming from the county experience, what we do here affects the county as a whole. It affects the housing market across the county as a whole. I've worked with a lot of students and other low-income families that are attending school here or have a job here in Davis, but they've had to move out of Davis just to be able to afford housing. What is that doing to, I'm sorry, I'm getting away with myself. I guess my summary with this is the urgency is so real that I am tired of us even having to be here to talk about these things. Like, can we please stop talking and get stuff done?
So I want to let people know it is 9 o'clock. I'm going to try to push us a little bit further. I don't know how long before they start trying to shut off the lights on us and kick us out. Eric, I know you have like a one-liner, maybe a very quick comment. Try to really limit your comments because I would like to hear from the rest of the students here. So, Eric, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you so much, David. I appreciate it. So, first of all, very, very humbled and very honored to be amongst so many renters, young professionals, and the best and brightest that we have for Davis into the future. So, thank you all for taking the time. I know we've got midterms that are just around the corner next week, and we're getting ready for a whole lot of stuff happening over the next few weeks on campus. So, thank you for that. I want to share 2 stories very quickly, and I'll be very quick. I'll try to be quick. First story, I was sitting in my apartment, this was summer of 2013. I was sitting in my apartment. We had a deal worked out with my landlord for a $50 a month or $50 a month increase in rent from basically one lease to the next. 1 week before the lease was set to be signed, we get a notification from our landlord that the owner had decided arbitrarily, from living in a different state, to increase the rent by $250 a month on top of the $50 a month that I was already paying. They gave me two choices. They told me to sign the paper and eat the sandwich, or they told me that they're going to serve me a 30-day eviction notice and I had to get the hell out. This was September. This was a week before classes were about ready to start. This was right when there was absolutely zero apartments available in Davis. This was the peak of our crisis. That's one story, and I had to live with that. Year after, I decided, okay, I'm not going to deal with that. I got to move. I got to get out of this place. So I moved, left that place, found another place. I ended up living with a colleague of mine. It was a 2-bedroom apartment. It was in Old North Davis. The security deposit, $4,000 that I had to pay out of my own damn pocket to have a place to live in this town, to continue my education, to serve the city, to be on the commission, and to help each and every person that I'm very thankful to help today and every day. I share these stories because this is the reality. All right, this is what we're living with. We have hundreds of students that are sleeping in cars. I know of at least a dozen students that are sleeping in the 24-hour library on campus, and they have to drive 3 hours home to stay with their parents in Tahoe because they can't afford anything here. This needs to be addressed. Okay, I'm not the only one who has to pay $4,000 for a security deposit. I'm not the only one who has to have shovel down a $200, $300 a month rental increase. So this is what drives me each and every day. It's what gets me up in the morning. It's what puts me to bed at night. And I'm very thankful for all of you for sharing your stories today. And I've asked each one of our panelists to comment on the realities of what I just presented. Thank you.
What's your last name?
Good. G-U-D-Z.
Okay, we're going to hold the final comments and go on to the rest of the student comments here.
Matt, the only lever that you have proposed today is to squeeze the students with above the market housing. You haven't proposed anything else. I'd like you to consider not throwing that idea away because it's not going to help us. In terms of why student on-campus housing is more expensive than off-campus, I'd like to tell you all this. In February 2018, 8 developers were selected to bid on future P3 student housing project RFPs across the UC system. Their purpose, according to UCOP, is to eliminate the redundancy of campus-by-campus solicitation process and expedite the delivery of housing, and 2, to heighten the level of competition through exclusive use of the identified P3 developers to achieve higher value projects for the university, which could maximize affordability to the students. I think this is crap. Heighten competition by shrinking the pool, heighten competition by creating an oligopoly, nonsense. So what are UCOP's and admin's relationships to these developers? Why is there no affordable housing developer among these 8? And Matt, what are you all going to do about this?
Okay, Matt, hold your thoughts. Next, please.
Hi, my name is Saraki, and I'm a international PhD student here at UC Davis. So first of all, I want to thank Tony for speaking on behalf of Solano Park, because that's my reality too. I have currently actually 2 dependents. I'm a head of household, and so if it wasn't because of Solano Park that exists, I don't think I would be able to live here, you know. And so, because if I go outside and I try to find a place to live, they're gonna ask me for a credit check, right? Since I'm an international student, I don't have that, right? Let's say I want to take out loans for being able to pay for my housing. I don't qualify for that either, right? My spouse, he might be able to work because he obviously has the capability to do so, right? But he doesn't qualify for a work permit, right? So you really leave me with no option, right? I mean, like, where am I gonna get the money from? I don't have a place to get the money from, right? And so that's one thing. The second thing is that I don't think it has been responded why Solano Park cannot be kept the way it is right now, right? That question hasn't been addressed yet. Because I feel like, yeah, I hear you. It's expensive to buy the materials to build, new developments. But what about the ones that we currently have? Is it expensive to build it, rebuild it? Yeah, maybe. But the way I see it is that Solano Park is probably seen as a premium location. Why? Because it's very close to downtown, and it's because it's very close to campus too, right? So maybe they are feeling like if they develop a new buildings, then they will be able to charge more for it, right? And so, but who's gonna live there, right? You basically want those families to live somewhere else because you're not giving us any options. So please answer that question. Second thing is that also I feel like there's a lot of reliability on the short-time memory that we have on these issues because basically you all know that the student population is renewed about every 5 years, right? So people who are currently fighting for this, we're not gonna be here in 5 years, most likely, right? So this fight can be all over again and all over again, right? With new developments. And so that's another issue. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Francois. I'm a first-year electrical engineering major. I am also the youngest person elected to the California Young Democrats Tech Caucus. But I'm also an out-of-state student, and I already pay, $35,000 for tuition without financial aid because they're really stingy in the, national financial aid. And then on top of that, I gotta pay for housing. When you count for housing, everything else, I have to pay $55 grand just to come to UC Davis. Next year, I'm gonna have to pay, God forbid, $965 a month for my apartment, which I had to find within, the first 5 months of me coming here to UC Davis. When I talked to my grandma on the phone, and she was like, why are you looking for an apartment 5 months when you came to UC Davis in University of Washington? I'm from Seattle, University of Washington. If you wanted to, you could stay in on-campus apartments for the entire time you're in university. Here, you have 1 year, checked out. You gotta find your housing, you gotta know the market in 5 months. And so we have a problem here. We gotta fix it. I don't know why certain types of people in Davis deny the fact that we have a housing crisis. We got people sleeping in cars, we got people sleeping in libraries. All because of air pollution.
There was a point raised earlier about vectors of, shuffling around University of California funding in order to, create more housing because, of course, we only have a limited amount of money every single year. People were saying, I think the point that was raised was, we could cut administration salaries, and the counterpoint was that, we don't want to have people work less hard, right, because they're being paid less, and then shuffle that into housing can be counterproductive, right? We should find funding from elsewhere. I'd like to tell a story about my electrical engineering computer science major, and engineering computer science teacher for the past few quarters, Matthew Butner. He's a lecturer, he gets paid around $50,000 a year. I've been checking his teaching record over the past few quarters. He's been teaching on average about 400 students, 450 students across 3 different classes every single quarter. Linda Kateki is working at the University of California, Davis. She's teaching around 1 class a quarter. Each class is around 100 students. And she's earning $450,000 a year. When I'm talking about reducing, say, administration compensation, right? Linda Kateki is currently being paid twice as much as any other professor. I understand that it's very difficult to compare professors to lecturers and all that, but these are the kinds of, I don't think that Linda Kateki is providing, 8 times the number of students, 3 times the number of classes, 9 times the number of salary. What is that? 56 times as much value to the university. as Matthew Butner is. And so I think that that's the kind of discussion that we need to have. Not do we cut our lecturer salaries, not do we cut our TA salaries, but do we cut our administrative salaries.
Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Matias, and I can barely just reach this. I'd like to echo what Nico said earlier about what are our options realistically. So backing up a little bit, I'm a fourth-year animal science and management major, the music minor. I work 3 jobs, active community member, whether I'm volunteering here at the Davis College Democrats, attending public forums, making sure that our everyday rights are secured, because housing is not seen as a human right. To developers, we're just money. To the university, we're just money. We're just pawns in the system. And for us, to kind of challenge, well, we don't want administrators making hundreds of thousands of dollars, whereas we're going to have to work twice, 3 times, 36 times as much to be just as effective within our society. So when I hear someone ask, hey, let's cut the administrative cost, let's cap housing maybe, let's add rent control, and then we got fired back as students. One, I'm standing on the opposite side of the room as community members. Even though I volunteered to set up the animal area during picnic day, even though I asked as a veterinary assistant to help take care of your animals when they're sick, even when I work in the lab or I milk cows, because of course Davis, on campus, to make sure that your food is clean and healthy and your animals are secure and your livelihood is going all well. When we're here working and studying and trying to be active community members and taking care of ourselves and not have mental breakdowns because, God forbid, we can't afford health care, what are our options realistically when we get this backlash and told that, well, if you come to this forum, we'll hear your opinion and maybe it'll be a drop in the bucket and maybe it'll make a difference. What is it that we can do? And what can we expect from the university, kind of turning this around you, and from the community? What can you do for us? Thanks.
Thank you. Last speaker.
Hi, my name is Kevin Colburn. I'm with the Davis College Democrats. So one of the things that I've been doing over the past few weeks is I've been registering voters, and I've heard a lot of students who have just said that they are completely hopeless. I have heard people that were strong advocates, or said that they were strong advocates 2 years ago, saying that it is now hopeless and there was nothing that can ever be done. And I am a commuter student. I am privileged enough to have grown up nearby. I can live with my parents and I can commute. But when I commute, I see that there are students sleeping inside their cars. And so I ask everyone that has the ability to do something about this problem, and everyone who is potentially saying that there is no crisis, there's no problem, that we don't need to be doing anything. When you walk out to your cars or walking out to your house, I just ask, when you breathe out and you see your breath go into the air, just remember there's students sleeping in their cars and it's going to get 10 degrees colder tonight.
Thank you. I just have a quick statement to make.
Why did she get to talk after you said
Kind of had to sleep with her.
I'm his other half, for those of you that don't know. I'm a UCD graduate. I love UC Davis. As a matter of fact, I picked Davis over UC Berkeley many years ago. Founder of College Democrats at UCD. But I wanted to say, so I graduated from Davis some years ago. And we had those struggles then. And it's so sad to see that they've increased and are happening even more now. I'm sitting back here and just, like you, I'm over here with tears in my eyes, that students have to sleep in cars. This is an outstanding university. This is an outstanding town, which is why I picked it many years ago and why David and I decided to settle here and raise our beautiful children here. It is appalling to me and to many other members of the community that this is happening and that you're having to also be subjected. You don't have to accept. I just want to cry. Shame on those landlords. And so what I want to say, my phone number, 530-400-2511, 530-400-2511, CeciliaGreenwald@yahoo.com. For those of you that have rat infestations, cockroaches, leaking faucets, landlords that won't repair I've had people in the past when I was in college, they'd come to me to ask me to help them make their landlords repair that. And as an adult, that's happened too. I will help you. We can form a committee and make them fix your leaky faucets, make them fix your whatever's leaking, your windows leaking or broken. They have a responsibility. They have a responsibility. There's a bare minimum that is required. You should not be subjected to live in those conditions. I will help you, and I do get results, okay? So I will work with you, 530-400-2511. Let's work together as a group, and we can address this with landlords that won't repair these because you should not be subjected to living in those conditions. Those are ghetto conditions. We are not in a ghetto community. This is Davis. It's a wonderful university town. It's a loving town, and we cannot accept that, and we shouldn't. So I'll work with you, okay? Thank you.
Okay, well, we went way over time. Hopefully the church doesn't mind too much. But I did want to thank the panel one more time, especially Matt for being so patient. You never know what the dynamic is going to develop, and having the LRDP just coming out, I think, put a big target on Matt's back. So thank you for being patient and listening. I hope, and we are videoing this, that the broader community can hear some of the student voices here. I think for me, the biggest shock was listening to stories when I interviewed a bunch of students last spring. And the reality is that students move on to campus and come to town in September. And these are 18-year-old students, sometimes not even 18-year-olds. And 3 months later, in a town that they really don't know, they're expected to go out and find a place to live and sign an adult's lease. And you can only imagine what situations are being taken advantage of. And a lot of places I know are very professional and it's not a problem, but a lot of places, as we've heard once again tonight, are not, and it is a problem. And so I think, as the university is looking at more housing, I think the biggest thing that they're going to have to do is that will make a big difference for the students, not only affordability, but finding a way for second-year students to live on campus, because that extra year is going to make a big difference. So we're going to wrap up now. If you filled out your cards, like I instructed you at the beginning, please turn them in as you leave. It's very important because I'm going to be looking at those cards, and maybe an article comes out of that, or maybe some more if there are more stories out there. So turn in the cards, and then once again, thank you for coming tonight. It's been a very educational evening. Thanks.